Bula Banaka. This is Clarkie's Corner, our weekly podcast, and it's great that you're able to check in again this week. I'm Greg Clark, and with the Swire shipping Fijian Drua hosting the Blues from New Zealand on Saturday in Lautoka, I'm thrilled to welcome a former Blues and All Blacks representative this week. He played 115 games for the Blues. He was captain at one stage. He played 2 tests for the All Blacks. And when you throw in over 100 games for North Harbour, well, that's what you call a very, very good career. He's now an analyst for Sky Sport in New Zealand. James Parsons, Bulla, and welcome. How's life post your playing days?
Clarkie. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's probably been more enjoyable than I expected, but obviously because I had to leave the game due to concussion, I didn't have to make a choice, which probably made it a little bit easier. I think it would have been a little bit harder to give the game up had it been my choice.
The Blues, they're 5th at the moment, James, just 1 point outside that all-important top 4. Remember, the top 4 will host a quarterfinal. Are you happy with the Blues so far? I guess that's the $6 million question.
Well, I think they've had a slow start. They've admitted that. You know, they've put themselves in a position, both against the Chiefs and the Crusaders, to actually win that game. They had a lot of attacking opportunities, but they just couldn't get across the line due to some pretty staunch defence from those sides. But I really felt like they came into their own against the Waratahs the other night. They made the Waratahs work pretty hard. The Waratahs only got 32% gain line percentage versus 50% for them. And you probably expect around that 30 or 40 because of the wet weather, but that's how well the Blues were playing on top of them. And when they get that fast ball, as we saw against the Highlanders, they're pretty unstoppable in attack. But I'm liking the signs I'm starting to see in the defence.
Now, the big news leading into last week's game against the Waratahs for the Blues was the announcement from Roger Tuivasa-Sheck that he's returning to rugby league and the Warriors next season. What did you make of that? And will it be a distraction for the remainder of the season?
No, I don't think so. Like, Roger's a really good character. People have a lot of respect and admiration for him. And it's a business now. We all know that. Professional sport, you know, he's got an opportunity that he really likes, and he has every right to go and sign that. We'll certainly miss him. There's no doubt about it. He's a really talented player, and he's fantastic in the community and with sponsors and the like. So he certainly will leave a hole. But if you look at a guy that's been around a long time and I think is doing a great job is Harry Plummer, and he fits that axis at 12 really nicely, and I'm hoping to see he gets more opportunity as the year goes on.
Now, apart from the diehard Waratahs fans, I don't think many tipsters went for the Tars to beat the Blues at Eden Park last weekend. It was a depleted team that the Tars sent to Auckland. So the Blues were able to dominate. I know the Force beat the Highlanders, the bottom place Kiwi team, but the gap between the Aussie and top Kiwi teams, it's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it is. The Brumbies are always fighting hard, and I think the Waratahs, I actually thought the Waratahs and the Red squad going into this year we're building towards, sort of breaking that barrier down, but they've just got off to a little bit of a slow start. Injuries played a part, and it's horrible when you start a season like that because you start chasing your tail, potentially start working too hard, overthinking everything. And look, I've been there before as a player. It's a hard cycle to break, and I think they've just got to use the Brumbies as a really good example. The Brumbies, I compare them a little bit like the Crusaders. You know how they're going to play, but you still can't stop it. Do you know what I mean? They're just so efficient in everything they do. They do the basics really well. They're going to come into the mauls. They're going to work their way into the 22. But now they're actually picking some talent up wide. So they've got the ability to skin you both ways. And I think if they can simplify their thought, I still think the Tars and the Reds can play a role in that final series.
The Fijian Drua head coach, Mick Byrne, has indicated in the last couple of weeks that some of his players, the data is showing that they do need a rest. Now, the Drua only halfway through their second season, but what do you make of this resting policy? Because the Brumbies left, I think, 5 Wallabies from memory and a couple of other players out of their team that went to the Crusaders. They missed an opportunity to say to the Crusaders, take that, and we'll see you in the semi-finals, and we're going to give it back to you there as well. And then the Waratahs last week, the coach, I mean, no one goes over there to lose a game, but he basically said it is what it is. They had to rest players. And the All Blacks are doing it as well. I sense that from the numbers I read out earlier on about you would have wanted to play every week, 52 weeks
Absolutely.
of the year. Yeah. So what do you make of this resting policy? Some of the teams are not going to be there. 4 of the teams will not be there in the quarterfinals. So they're going to have a month off or a few weeks off anyway before the international season. It's starting to, get some headlines now, this resting policy.
It certainly is. It's always been a big thing over here. I think since 2007, it's been factored into our main All Blacks. And, sometimes coaches do want to give guys opportunity. So that comes about maybe a slip in form. But you're right. My personal take is my dad always taught me never give another guy a chance in your jersey because you might not get it back. So I was always quite nervous taking the rest weeks because, if someone goes really well, you may not get it back ever again. So it's that's probably my philosophy. But I understand with sports science how far it's come, where the athletes have even got to after 2 years of myself being out of the game. When a standing sideline, it's more and more physical every year. And Super Rugby, probably, it's not what they want, but all the sides that have won titles, if you go through the whole history, have used their whole squad really well. And if you don't get that balance right, you'll fall off a cliff in the finals time when you probably need to lift the gear and bring it home.
I appreciate your thoughts. It's a lot easier for armchair critics, isn't it, to sit in the lounge chair and say, why aren't they playing their best players every week? I take your point. Aussie teams have won just 2 games against New Zealand opposition in the first 9 weeks. Wallabies coach Eddie Jones is not a happy man. I guess the All Blacks coach Ian Foster would be rather satisfied with the way things are going.
Yeah, I think he will. I don't think Eddie should be too worried because I feel like the Rebels have probably done a lot better than anyone expected them, and some new players, but also some Wallaby players are really standing up for them. I think Reece Hodge is in unbelievable form at the moment. Ekwasi, the number 8, he's just flying. Wilkins, and the beauty is Eddie's going to give them an opportunity if they keep that form up. So there's pros and cons, but I think probably his biggest disappointment will be the Tars and the Reds because of the amount of Wallabies in those squads, and they're not just getting the results that he needs to see that they're capable of getting at the next step.
Well, it's still a long way to go in the regular season, so maybe the Tars and the Reds can both make sure that they cement a place in the 8 and then treat the whole season from there. The Drua are 9th on 13 points, but only 2 points separate 6th and 10th on the ladder. So back-to-back losses to the top teams, the Chiefs and the Brumbies, haven't really hurt the Drua a great deal. But how do you rate the new team, the Drua, so far?
Oh, I rate them extremely highly because I think what I've seen change in them this year is their game management. Last year, I think it was against the Brumbies in Canberra. They'd been on defence, I'd say 15, 16 phases. They finally got a turnover penalty, and Frank Lamani quick taps it on his line after everyone's absolutely gassed and he tries to run himself out of trouble. Whereas this year, guys like him are picking the right moment to do that, but also having the ability to go to the corner. And I think that's probably a reflection on how well their pack's going and the physical nature they play it. And then the key stat for them, every time they lose, they play too many rucks in their 22. So I think it was 18 rucks they played against the Chiefs. And the game they bet against the Crusaders, they had 2 rucks in the 22 and then like 6 between the 22 and halfway. So they played it like the old adage of this game is put the ball in front of your forward and you give yourself a chance every week. If you overplay a hand, especially as the Crusaders felt in heat, they'll be a little bit more accustomed to the Blues, but the Blues need to be mindful of that. I'd like to think they've got a strong kicking strategy going into this week and making sure they don't waste too much energy in the wrong parts of the field.
We're expecting a loud and enthusiastic crowd at Churchill Park in Lautoka on Saturday afternoon when the Drua hosts the Blues. Who should we be looking out for in the Blues team? Who's impressed you so far? I mean, you could probably say 1 to 23 or 1 to 30 times, but who are your favourites?
There's a couple of guys standing out. I think Ricky Riccatelli's back to his form that when he was knocking on the All Black door. He's been exceptional in dark arts, as you call it. He doesn't try to do anything flashy. He just does a set piece. He carries hard. He cleans well, latches onto other guys. Another young man, Anton Segner, I think he's really come of age. Blindside, probably can play all 3 from Tasman. And Zansman, I thought, they've managed him really well into the season. He had a big year last year, and I suppose his stocks rose heavily. So they've managed him well. And I think the performance he put on and the size of him, and we do know that there's potentially a lot of first fives leaving the shores. Seeing him play well the other night really excited me because that you've got that depth coming through at the time. So those are 3 young ones. And then you've just got, the stars like Hoskins Satutu. He looks like he's put on weight. He's fitter. He's been told he needs to be more physical, and he is doing that in spades, and it's probably the form player for the Blues. And I think any chance, Dalton's probably been a little bit by the brakes. He's the sort of guy that wants to play every game and every minute, but he's coming right as well. So plenty to like, plenty to get excited about, and the form's just starting to rise, and you're sort of seeing the cream rise to the top, which is good.
Visiting teams are trying to work out the best way to prepare for a match in Fiji. Any on the Blues approach? Have they been spending 80 minutes in a sauna every day preparing for the heat? I mean, is there an easy fix?
It's pretty brutal, like even when I go up for a holiday, trying to go for a run is pretty tough in the humidity, but they'll be doing some chamber work, potentially training with more gear on in the sun here in New Zealand. There's many ways of skinning a cat, but I honestly, it's the old adage: when you turn up on game day, you just got to roll your sleeves up. It's going to hurt, and you just got to love it. It's no different when we went to South Africa playing at 2 p.m. You've got to flip it in your mind and see it as something that you can overcome so that you don't get caught out.
Apart from some typical Fijian Drua counter-attacking tries like the one against the Blues last week, for example, the Drua on the road are very different to the Drua at home. What's impressed you about Mick Byrne's men in their wins over the Crusaders and the Rebels in Fiji?
Yeah, in Fiji, I think they've got their game management right. It's almost like, I sort of was thinking maybe the crowd could overwhelm them and they try to, play their style from everywhere, but they seem like he is a real taskmaster, Mick. Like he'll have a strategy, but he also won't want to restrict them. So it's finding that balance. And I think another year under him, speaking to him sideline a few weeks ago, his communication style they're starting to understand. So things are clicking and gelling a little bit more. But I do think their game management's been the best part of their game. And then obviously their power forwards and the midfield, like the breakdown, their carries, their ability to, the one job for a ball carrier is to win the collision. And if you win the collision, even if you only get a metre past the gain line, it's quick ball and you play on top of them. Man, they just do that with ease, absolute ease. So that's why I'm saying the Blues have got to be really mindful in these conditions that they don't overplay and they leave juice in the tank for when they're on D, because game will go in momentum. And if they do too much, the tank may be empty.
You've had a bit to do with the Drua head coach, Mick Byrne, as well. He was at the Blues during your years and at the All Blacks as well.
Yeah. He's a fantastic thinker of the game. He's always looking to evolve, doesn't stand still. He loves the micro detail, and that's what makes players better. That's what takes you from good to great, is the detail within your clean. Who are you taking? Who are you cutting from coming around the corner so it creates space for a 9? He goes every ruck. You'd review with him every tackle. Every line out throw, he'd be tapping it, saying that's 43 squares or whatever. The finer detail, man, he is meticulous at, and I think that could probably be overwhelming for guys new to professional sports. So I think he's clearly making that balance right, because that seems to be working.
Okay. Calling the Drua games last year, the home games, and this year, I've been impressed with so many of the players stepping up in year 2, especially the new boy, Yosefo Masi. 6 tries so far. His combination with Ravovo. They weren't in Auckland, but at the time of this conversation, we don't know the teams yet, but I suspect both Ravovo and Masi should be there this week. But who have been the standouts for you?
You just stole a couple. But I think I did sideline against Moana Pasifika round 1, and it was Yosefa's debut. And we spoke to him afterwards, and just you can see why he's sort of got that no fear approach, because he's very relaxed. He doesn't overthink it. He keeps it pretty simple in the way he's thinking, and that's the way he plays. And when he can play off Ravovo, man, he's just a beast. He is so powerful and strong. He had a great combination, Ravovo with Vota last year, and obviously, Yosefa's stepped in that spotlight. But I like him at centre because he's got that sevens ability to link. A lot of centres that are that fast, that big, forget to pass a lot of the time, but his connection work has been seamless. And then I think Frank Lamani's really matured as a player. He's had some big games, especially that Crusaders game. He was seriously impressive in the way he managed the game. I think last week they could have kicked from 9 a little bit more, because the Chiefs are putting a massive pressure on their kick out of the exit. And I think that's why they overplayed in that half. So I think that it was a good week to not be damaged so much on the points table, but just a reminder of that finer detail within trying to get out of their half with that 9-10 combination. But they've been going really well.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding me. Apologies, it was the Drua and the Chiefs last week, not the Blues. Close to Auckland, I guess. Tavita Canaveri at hooker, he's taken his game to another level. Your old position.
I didn't know. I didn't know him before the season, if I'm honest. Like, I'd seen him maybe play a couple of games for Fiji, but holy hecker, he's really good. Power runner. Like, what I love is his fight in the tackle. So he's got guys on him, but he never dies. He never dies. Keeps going for more. And sometimes he's even shrugged guys off, after 10 seconds of them trying to tackle them. I think nearly went over, but he knocked it on. Yeah. Cool player, uncomplicated, really solid at set piece, And he looks like he's an actions leader. And you watch him, and you always think as a player, man, you get behind that guy, you'd listen on his every word, the way he sort of throws his body around.
A special guest this week on Clarkie's Corner is former All Black hooker and Centurion for the Blues, James Parsons. James, let's chat about this week's game. Week 10, Shop and Save Super Rugby Pacific. Friday, it's Hurricanes and Brumbies, so it's fourth versus second. 4 points separating them on the table. This is a huge game for the Brumbies, who need to make a statement against a top Kiwi team in New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, two sides that are going really well, especially attacking-wise. The Canes are right up there, and so are the Brumbies in most key attacking stats. Both sides have probably been surprisingly a little bit loose at times on defence, not just being able to, Canes, for example, not being able to, sort of finish off against the Blues and the Chiefs the other day. And, the uncharacteristic slow start from the Brumbies, and that Waratahs had to work bloody hard to get that result. So there is, things to work on, but they're both pretty slick. But I think if you look at the key stats where both sides get a benefit from it, is they both do really well off turnover ball. So that breakdown, guys like Savia and co need to be really on, which they have been. They lead the comp in breakdown turnovers. I think Brumbies are a third or fourth as well. Samu loves it. So that maul's not going anywhere either. So both type fives, the battle of the type five, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but the battle of the breakdown and slowing attacking ball down, even if you don't get the penalty or turnover, you have to slow the ball down against these teams because they will skin you out wide.
Waratahs are playing the Highlanders, both coming off the Highlanders coming off losses, desperate to stay in the race for the top 8 playoffs, both off losses, in fact. So it's a game on, especially for the Highlanders, who have been pretty disappointing.
Yeah, well, their scrum ran at 33%. Their maul D obviously got them in a lot of trouble with yellow cards. So I think discipline and set piece will be the key focus this week. Their tackle percentage was at 91%, which surprised me because the Force had 20 clean breaks. But I suppose they made the tackles when they were in position, but because they're down so few, it gave the Force that sort of ease to enter into their 22. But it's a big game for them. They started getting their mojo back, but we know Aaron Smith is critical to this team going well and playing at the right tempo. And he probably, his father passed away, so he didn't play against the Force, didn't make the trip. And key players like that are a big loss, especially when it comes out of the blue. Yes, it creates opportunity and some guys take it, but he is a massive cog and allowing others. So, like, there's a lot of leaders in their pack that just like to do, but he's a key voice that, and I don't know who was replacing that. They just seemed a little bit helter skelter.
Saturday, okay, Drua and the Blues in Lautoka, 2 p.m. kickoff for local time. You'll be chipping the Drua, no doubt.
Man, it's a tough one, but I think after the Crusaders, this one won't sneak up on any team going to Fiji. And I think it'll be tight though, because I know Mick will want this. Like, he's a competitive man, playing one of his old teams. He'd like to get a scalp, but I think the Blues will hopefully come over the top.
Okay, we won't mind the fact that you're tipping the Blues, your old team. Moana Pasifika against the Rebels. What about Moana? How are they coping with Super Rugby Pacifica? And over the years, of course, you've played with so many people with Pacifica heritage.
So, the thing about Moana, they're a confusing beast. Like, I'm a bit of a stats nerd, as you can probably tell. But they've got the most post-contact meters. So that physical ball carry and quick ball they've got. They've got the most, I think, running meters as well on attack. So their set piece last year was at 64. It's around sort of 88, 89%. now. So they've made good improvements on their side of the ball. Where they lack the ability to actually get over the top of teams and score points, which they do score points through that brute, but as all the moving parts, the bodies in motion out the back, that discipline like the Crusaders and the Brumbies have to run a hole every time the same way. And sometimes they switch off, or their back player switches off out the back. And if you're defending and you've got the forward pod there and there's no one out the back, well, it's happy days, because you know that they're coming down your chally and you can really tee off on them. And then they can't stop points is the biggest issue. And I think it's their tackle choice. So they get off the line, and they go for the big hits, and they get those big hits now and again. But what they don't do, they've approached the defensive breakdown the least in competition. So they're not slowing the ball. So they're not giving their teammates time to set and actually make the next tackle. So that teams just get in behind them, and it's just too easy. It's not that they're poor defenders. They're just almost trying to dominate the tackle, rather than the old adage, get them to the ground, send a hunter in, slow it, we go again. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Don't get bored of it. I know there's time for the big hits. I wasn't one that could do them, but I know that it's in their arsenal and something they love. But it's just the balance of that tackle choice, I think, is hurting them on defence.
The Chiefs and the Crusaders, my goodness, first versus third. The chance for the Crusaders to have lost to the Chiefs early in the season. Game of the round, no doubt about that. Wow, this is going to be exciting.
Yeah. It'll be huge. Both the Blues and the Crusaders did a number on the Chiefs at home, and I know for a fact that team has not forgotten those. They obviously have already beat the Blues and set one off. They beat the Crusaders last year at home, but away from home, but then they lost in the rematch at home. So it's very similar. So it's exciting. But I think the Chiefs are just, man, their team, it's just ridiculous, like the work they're getting through. And if you Sammy Penny-Finau, blindside flanker, man, he's put himself on the radar. Off the back of a formed team, he's put himself on national radar, I believe. I haven't heard that, obviously, but I just think his performance, Brodie Retallick's back to his ever best. He's topping tackle counts, ruck counts, 72 minutes and still winning the stats. So their big dogs are playing well. And I think we all know Brad Weber and Damien McKenzie are going really well, but Bryn Gatland's doing a good job when he gets an opportunity. So really exciting game. I am going to pick the Chiefs. I just think their forward pack has got a lot of runs on the board, whereas there's a lot of injuries coming back for the Crusaders. The Crusaders will be there come finals time. There's no doubt about it. But they've got, Cullen Grace was first back, Dave Havili last week, Jack Goodhue. So they've got the talent coming back, but you're not just going to hit the ground and start. Well, Dave Havili did last week. He was outstanding, but not everyone can do that, obviously. So I think the Chiefs at home.
Reds versus fourth. These two franchises have history. I mean, they don't like each other. Go back to the early days. There was a mass exodus out of Queensland across to the Force. The Force are 8th on 13. The Reds are 6th on 15. So not a lot between them.
No, but this is similar to the Highlanders and Tars. The Reds need this. I'm not counting the Force out, but I just don't know if they've got the depth of squad. But the Reds team needs to get back and behind guys like Mick Wright. I think he's also. I sort of see him as like a little mini Hooper. He's everywhere. Great support lines. I love the response from Tate McDermott. Man, he has played so well since being left out of that Wallabies camp. It's been because I really rate him as a player. I like watching him. I think he's got that international game, and he needed that little boot up the backside to bring the best out of him. And man, he's done that. So if the Reds can get in behind those two men, I think they can get the job done.
Okay, of course, the buys are over now, so we're back to 6 games every week, and that is week 10. Now, James, as a former All Black, what are your expectations of the ABs for the Rugby World Cup starting in September?
Yeah, look, I think we definitely don't go on as favourites as we, I suppose, have previously. But what I do like is an All Black side, I suppose, going in as underdogs or people perceiving them they're not up to it, I think it's a dangerous beast. It certainly excites me. It's certainly a different space for us to be in. But if you look across Super Rugby, the senior All Blacks are playing out of their skin. They know this year they need to step up. Sam Cane is back to his good best. I mentioned Brodie Retallick. Artie Savia is a freak. Richie and Bodie are getting there, but Damien's pushing through as well. halfbacks, I don't know how you're going to pick three. Like, there's just too many. So I think there's that depth back and people in form that are going to lead this side and have got the caps on the board to do that at a World Cup. So it will be hard though. France, they're tough to beat. They are tough to beat at home. Like that Stade Francais full. Even you watch it during the Six Nations. I just that'll be a big task. But just like the Black Ferns, no one really expected them to come over the top of England and win that Rugby World Cup. So if they get in the right physical shape and they've got that mental edge, which we've seen in Super Rugby, they're definitely a chance. But I think you guys are as well. And I know I'm not just saying this because I'm on the podcast. I've said it on a number of other ones. I think Eddie Jones is the sort of coach, like using Tate McDermott, Jake Gordon as an example. Both of them have been exceptional. He knows what buttons and strings to pull to get the very best. And I think he backs his coaching ability, his way. I listened to a podcast with him talking to Matty Johns, and he goes, I know who needs the stick and I know who needs the carrot. And he goes, that's one thing I'm really sure of, and I've got to get that right, short space of time to bring the best out of players. So he's already thinking, not so much the tech, like they can all play. There's no doubting that. But I think that mental shift and what he'll give them in terms of self-belief could be a powerful thing.
And the draw for the Fijian team, the Flying Fijians and the Wallabies, is pretty good, because have a look at that quarterfinal weekend in Paris, where the teams you would think would be there would be France and Ireland, South Africa, New Zealand, and of course Scotland's on that side of the draw as well. So only two of those teams are going to get through to the semi-finals. But the quarterfinal weekend in Marseille, Australia, Fiji, Wales, Argentina, Japan. No disrespect to all those teams, but it definitely is an easier draw to be in. So you mentioned the Wallabies, but the Flying Fijians, I mean, gee, they've got talent now right around the world, not just at the Drua. And Simon Rowe, who was on this podcast last week, and you could just tell that he's excited. He had spent 3 weeks in Europe catching up with his charges over there. They're going to have a pretty good training base prior to heading over to France. They'll play a couple of games as well. So, you know, in Fiji, everyone's got fingers crossed for this year.
Well, I think they can. The way the draw is going, you'll know Ben Darwin and his cohesion statistics, and I think that's what the benefit they're getting with a Drua team playing together, understanding each other, knowing each other's movements. Because Ma'anono and Conrad Smith didn't just become great; they played over 300 games together. They knew what the other was doing before the other probably knew it. So having that cohesion here and a good base in the Drua, and then the X factor they have up north with some quality coaching, and as you say, they're right in the hunt, especially quarterfinal time. And then I just think when you get to finals footy, you just never know, especially when you're playing against Fijian players. They can just pull something from nowhere, and it could be the difference. Similar to France, when France beat the All Blacks, and I know it was a forward pass, whatever, but they chanced their arm in 07, and they stunned them. Fiji can play a very similar role against many nations in this World Cup.
James, I don't know if there's a big following for Super W in New Zealand, but the semi-final week, it's 1v4, 2v3. Sunday, Concord Oval in Sydney, it's the Waratahs women taking on Fijian Drua in a replay of last year's final. The Drua got the job done on that occasion, but they've already lost to the Tars this year, and it's going to be hard to see the new-look Drua team bouncing back this week. But good luck to them. And the second semi, Queensland Reds taking on the Brumbies women. So another big weekend of rugby coming up, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to call another Fijian Drua home game. It'll be a cracker against the Blues on Saturday. And James, final thoughts about rugby?
Oh, look, I think it does get a hard time, Super Rugby, but I do want to go back to the law innovations and just acknowledge them. Like, I think there's people higher up trying to make change to bring the people back to the game, and I think when you see the love and the passion for the game in Fiji, it really it sort of gives you good spirits over here in New Zealand. We're very envious and very jealous of those sorts of crowds to play in front of, and the love and the passion you see there. So I think those innovations are hopefully bringing young kids back to the game. There's more ball and play, and we need to get this game firing in all cylinders across the Pacific, New Zealand and Australia.
Well, James Parsons, thank you very much. We appreciate not just your time, but also your expertise. All the best. Stay well. Keep those stats flowing, and we'll catch you some other time, hopefully.
Cheers, Clarkie. Thanks for having me.
former All Black and the Blue Centurion, James Parsons. That's it for another week in Clarkie's Corner. Really appreciate the fact that you could join in again. If you can't get to Lautoka, join Kara Karoy, Sam Wykes and myself for the call. I'm Greg Clark. Bye for now. Mo Bay.